Welcome to Lift Your Story podcast with guest Emma Jane Taylor, child sex abuse activist, author, speaker, and founder of The Works Company. Hi, everyone. I'm Lori Ann. I am that gal from Toronto, Canada. And I just want to send the regrets that Roy Miller from Dallas, Texas could not be with us today. But we welcome you to the Lift Your Story podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, Emma Jane Taylor. She is a child sex abuse activist, author, speaker, and the founder of The Works Company. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today. It's really great to be here talking to you.
Absolutely. And this is a very touchy subject, but I'm very glad that you're here to talk to us about it. How did you get involved in being a child sex abuse activist?
So through my own personal story, I was abused as a young girl from 9 through to 16. It was a very difficult time. In those years, I was told I was a failure. I was told I was the girl going nowhere. And I guess I wore that badge with pride for an amount of time and kind of was failing everywhere in life. And most people thought I'd be dead or in prison by the time I was 20. Fortunately, neither. When I was 19, I had a light bulb moment that helped me to realign who I was, to think again, to start sort of doing some soul searching, to go into therapy. So I was in child psychiatry when I was 13, but no one really got behind me as a person. No one knew that I was being sexually abused. No one really talked to me openly because, you know, back in the day, I'm a 70s baby. We didn't really have these open conversations that we have now. And certainly there was no social media around. So we didn't have any conversations so openly and publicly. So I went through a lot of therapy over the next kind of 20 years really, because when you're going through any kind of difficulty like that, it's not, I thought it would be a case of I just book 12 weeks of therapy and then I'll be fine, but it really wasn't like that. You know, we had to do so much work and undo a lot of things that had been hidden and kept down, and through being sexually abused as a child, my biological father also told me he never wanted to see me again. So I was 12 when he told me I loved him. He was like the best thing since sliced bread. So there was a catalogue of disasters and pain and trauma. And I had a lot to get through, you know, a lot to undo, a lot to understand. So it wasn't kind of a 12-week fix. It wasn't even a 24-week fix. It was years. And, you know, and I think it's really important to be honest and authentic about that, because when you've gone through any difficulty, regardless of what your story is, you don't just get over it with a pill or a good night's sleep or a nice cup of tea and a biscuit. There's a lot of work that has to be done behind the scenes to help you get to that point. You know, I very much focus now on I do a lot of fitness. I'm a fitness addict, but for me, it's much more about my mental health, my emotional health. And part of that is being physically fit as well. So all of those three things work together. So as I've gone through the years, stepped up, shared my story, written my first book, I came to a point where I felt like I needed to do more in this area. And so over the last sort of few years, I've been really sort of upping my game with conversations. I've got a second book on the go now, and I'm just about to launch a charity here in the UK, which is focused on reducing child sex abuse. So I've stepped forward and gone, do you know what? I'm not afraid to have difficult conversations if it means change. I'm not afraid to talk to sex offenders. I'm not afraid to do what I have to do to look at a deep conversation that gives us research, which is also key to the change that is needed. So yeah, so for me now, it's about going, okay, I'm going to lift some dirt rolls. I'm going to find out a little bit more. I want some positive change because, you know what, I know how lonely, sad and frightening it can be growing up. And my dream now is for children to sleep at night without fear, nightmares and trauma. We need children to live their lives as children, not with a complex emotion and mental health difficulty attached. They need to be nurtured. They need to be loved and listened to. Children need to also know how to navigate inappropriate behavior. So that's where I am now. The work that I'm doing on the charity, which is going to launch over the next year, really looks deeper into the behavior of the whole subject. And I've now joined various advisory boards here, sex offender advisory boards, because I want to know more. I really want to know more. And I've also decided, with the work that I'm doing in this space, is to take on some challenges over the next year. So I'm doing 12 challenges over 12 months to raise awareness for the charity, for the project. So they can be, it's a 10K virtual, a 10K run. I'm swimming the English Channel virtually. I'm doing half marathons. I'm doing night walks. I'm walking around the Isle of Wight. I'm doing a 100K ultra challenge, walking along the Jurassic Coast here in the UK. I'm doing a sponsored silence, which will nearly kill me. And so I've decided to go all in. Obviously, I do have my businesses running in the background, but I have a great team working with me on those projects. And now I can be here at the front saying, right, I'm going to put my hand up, I'm going to step forward and do what I can to make a difference. So I'm joining the millions of voices standing up for this conversation, to be present and able in a world where we need people to be present and able to help other people.
That's very interesting. Now, you were saying that you were speaking to sex offenders. In what aspect are you speaking to them?
So for my book, I have interviewed someone who's on parole out in America. And because I think it's important to go behind the scenes. And I think that in life, actually, Lorianne, is, you know, we've got victims, survivors, and a huge amount of people that need looking after. But the people, perpetrators, the bullies, the people behaving badly, you know, putting them into prison, of course, is a safe place to keep them. But then what? Then what? Then what's happening to that person? You know, are they getting the training? Are they getting the support? Are they able to navigate away, not to continue this behavior? Or are they going in for 5, 10, 15 years and coming out and starting again, and someone else gets hurt? You know, are we just delaying the process of someone else being hurt? So let's get behind the voices. You know, I always say, you know, to my family, if someone's bullying you, of course that's not right, and you stand up for yourself and you go and find someone to talk to, and you tell me as your parent. But also, it's good to understand there's probably a story behind the story. So that person, a child, young person, is probably very troubled to be at that point that they feel that they've got to behave badly towards other people, because we're not born like that. We're born innocent, we're born nice, we're born, you know, in a good way. And it's what happens in life that changes us. So I've interviewed someone in the US, I've interviewed a few people here in the UK, offenders on parole and off parole. And one thing that has really come to my attention, and, you know, it's by no means, none of them want pity. None of them want any, you know, no one feeling sorry for them. They know what they've done is bad. Not everybody does, actually. And then that's another conversation. Their education and their upbringing and their basic life skills from their guardians and parents was to abuse. So that's all they ever learned, right? So if you're teaching people through your life to behave in a certain way, that's learned behavior, and it's not uncommon then for people to go on. It's not definite, of course, you know, not all people who are abused as children go on to be abusers. But if they haven't got anyone loving and educating them and helping them through those difficult situations, it can then become a difficult place for them to live. And then, of course, then the abuse starts. So, you know, the work that we're doing is saying, look, let's educate early. Let's educate children earlier so they might not become victims, but also they might not become perpetrators, because they will understand differently how relationships should be, how people should be, how we should respond and act to each other. So it's looking at the whole picture, and we can only gauge that information by putting ourselves out to have difficult conversations. It wasn't a comfortable conversation for me to have with the perpetrators, but it was very interesting. And what was really interesting at the end of my meetings with them, and you had someone with you actually while you're having the meetings, at the end of the meeting, they all said they'd like to talk again, and they wished me luck, because they believe the work that I was doing in this area is what is needed to reduce the crime.
That's wonderful. And did you find out, do they have any sort of reform in the prisons while they're in prison, as far as, because obviously there is some mental connection, like, to what they're doing. As you said, it could be, their upbringing and such. But to just put them into prison, like you said, and then just let them out without any sort of help, that would make it difficult to even imagine them coming out without that. So did you learn anything about that aspect of?
Yeah, there's lots of different educational courses going on inside, and also when they come out, they don't have to do it. But of course it does help them, and it could reduce their parole, but also, there's different sort of courses available. I guess if you want to tick a box and do a course, then that's maybe what some of them are doing. But it's much deeper than that, and they've got to want to do it. So, the ones that are going on into the different training courses here in here in the UK, and also over in America where you are, is that they are looking at expanding the education throughout, but also when they come out, that education continues. So, but they have to want to. So, how can you encourage someone to want to be educated on a subject if they haven't embraced why they're doing, why the purpose is? And you've got to, it's like the chicken and an egg thing with all of this, right? You've got to understand what's right and wrong. You've got to understand why you're doing the training. You've got to understand the importance of continuing that training and what it's going to help you do in your life. One of the guys I spoke to then went on to look after other offenders, to help them in their education, to say, look guys, this hasn't been so bad, right? Now my life is getting better because I now understand things differently. So now he runs a safe house for sex offenders on parole, and he looks after them. So a bit of a nurturing procedure. I think there was a lot of difficulties in prison with trying to get people, because I guess they're dealing with lots of people who sadly are not going to think like you and I, and they may never think like you and I. And so how do you navigate that conversation, and what treatment do you do to navigate that conversation? Lorianne, through the work that I've been doing, I've heard story after story, and each story is tragic and upsets me every time. But one of the stories I found really, really, really hard was a 2-year-old girl. Her mother was a junkie, and to pay for her habit, she sold her daughter, however often she did, to sex traffickers. And she'd drop her off at 9 o'clock and bring her up home at 5 o'clock in the evening, and she'd pick her up at 5 o'clock in the evening. So she got her hit. This girl is completely wrecked in life and going through all sorts of trauma. And then where do you start with that education, right? Because that the mother is wrong. She might not have an understanding because she's a serious junkie. But why is she in that mess, and what support did she get before she got into that mess? Her child is clearly just something you can't even imagine, right? I mean, it's heartbreaking, it makes me want to cry. And then the trafficker, the groomer, who in their right mind thinks this is okay to do this to young people? And I also read a story here in the UK about 2 young people under the age of 4 who had every bone broken in their body, being sexually abused as children, and even younger than that, died. But there's a lot of things to be done to raise awareness. Now, lots of people, I know people who say to me, EJ, I don't want to hear about this stuff, but it upsets me. And I'm like, but if you don't hear, we're never going to have a change, right? We need to get awareness out there. We need awareness on all sorts of subjects, from race, religion, politics. Everyone needs to vent their voice. No one really wants to speak about child sex abuse. There are lots of people out there, and I meet a lot of people who are raising the roof on these conversations, but still many people are just like, oh, I don't want to hear. The story I just told you, you winced. I winced when I first heard it, but I made myself listen to it. And inside I'm hurting, and then I go to bed tonight and I'll be thinking about it, and it'll be on my head, and then I'm empowered to write a bit more because that is why this stuff is important. So, you know, taking on this conversation today with me, Lorianne, is really important, and it's a really good subject for people to get behind.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to the victims, I would imagine the more that we speak about it too, the more they're more willing to come out. But I would imagine there's in some bizarre way, some shame of them coming out and speaking to being sexually abused.
Yeah, you know, if I go back, I'm 40, I'm 49 next week. And I first spoke out for the first time when I was 44, 45. So, you know, it took me years. And I was exactly that person. I was embarrassed. I was in shame. I was worried about the effect it might have on my mum and dad and my mum and my stepdad, my family, my friends. And then suddenly one morning I thought, I need to do this, because there'll be other people like me who might get some confidence if they hear me speak. And if I could just help one person, it will be worth it. And now here I am 4 years on, and it's bigger than that. I mean, you know, my voices, along with other voices, has helped so many people, and the work I'm doing is very global now. But I was terrified. I mean, the first time I spoke, I had sick in my throat and I was shaking. I was so scared. And I didn't sleep for about 3 days after that, thinking, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? What have I said? And then suddenly the floodgates have opened, and I thought, you know what, this might car crash my career. The first time it was shared in the press here in the UK, I got on a train and just disappeared for the day. I am mortified. I'm like, what am I doing? And then you go 24, 48 hours later, okay, that's okay. I've had some nice emails and people have thanked me because it's helped them, and okay, this is okay. Obviously it's prompted difficult conversations as well within my own private world. But it's unleashed and liberated a lot of conversations as well for a lot of people, and for that I will always be grateful. So every time I step forward, you know, in the national press or the global press, I'm now going, okay, this is scary, but this is exactly what we need to be doing. And I put my brave knickers on those days, say a prayer, and just get on with it.
That's wonderful. And I know that the work that you're doing will also help. I'm almost in tears here, so do forgive me. But help even younger, like look how long it took you to speak out, and how many years you struggled with it. You know, hopefully this will open the door for younger people, whether it is both male and female, to speak out sooner, to be able to deal with the issue sooner, so that they don't have to go as long as you did.
Yes, and you know, one thing I would say is I took a lot of years to recover from 7 years of abuse, and obviously losing my father in the middle of that, and I've never seen him since. There was a lot of things for me to undo, and I would say, whoever you are, wherever you are, speaking publicly is a different ballgame. Going to get some help is really important. And I would say, I would advise you to do that as soon as you can, and do it as confidently as you can. And it's okay, right? I mean, I'm where I am now at nearly 49, with a huge team around me. I have got a lot of support. If I need to tap into anything, I can. But I don't ever feel that I need to go back to those days to talk about them. I now look at streamlining my future. So how can I improve my world by what I'm doing, by what I've learned, and what I've achieved? So opening the door to speaking up for the first time in a safe place with a counsellor, or maybe you could write. I mean, I wrote a letter to start with to my friend. It took me ages. I rang a counsellor that was way out of town, because I was like, I don't want to bump into you. I did lots of things very slowly, but once I did open that door, it was such a relief to talk to someone, to let go and have that, my voice freed as such. And so if you're listening to this, you're not alone. Speaking to someone is okay. Therapy is a positive thing. It's a very good thing to do, whatever your conversation, whatever your difficulty. Having a therapist or someone to rely on, or not rely on, but to be with you, working through your difficulties, shows how strong you are. It took me years to get to see a therapist because I was so scared and vulnerable and insecure. But once I started stepping over that threshold, I found a new strength, and continued to do so. I did an A to Z of therapy over many years, from Reiki to psychotherapy to hypnotherapy to sound therapy to EFT to reflexology to acupuncture. I did everything, and it really did help me. And now I work quite a lot with energy healing and clairvoyancy now, because I like to move forward. So find the right platform for you, and go for it. And if you're worried or you want someone to talk to, my door is always open. I'll help you take that first step to find a therapist. I will encourage you to do what you can to find some good space to survive, because it really is worth it. And I didn't car crash my career. My world got bigger, and I became much more capable to do what I'm doing today.
That's fantastic. And you're right too, but I know a young lady who, and you have to be careful who you go to though, definitely. Because I had a young lady who went to her stepmother, and because she was sexually abused, and I think she was probably about 17 at the time. And the stepmother says, "Oh, that's nothing. You should hear what my sister went through." That's not what that person, that victim, needs to hear. That victim needs to be held and understood.
Yes.
And say, "This is, how."
Oh my God. Yes. And you know what? That kind of annoys me when people like that, because every story is as bad as the next story, right? There is no competition here. I've heard people on Twitter saying, "I'm not going to share my story because I've just heard someone way worse than mine." I'm like, but it doesn't matter how big or indifferent your story is. It could be one day of abuse. It could be 7 years of abuse. It could be 20 years of abuse. It doesn't matter. The fact that you were abused as a child was wrong.
Yes.
Period. End of. So there is no competition. Each story is as hard and as difficult as the other, and it's all relative.
I absolutely agree. So, so your program that you're working, it's called 9010. Is that right?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we are launching a charity here in the UK. It's a project that we're turning into a charity. There's a lot of work going into it. Setting up a charity is not an easy, it's not like this is my name and this is my date of birth, go. There's a lot of due diligence and work behind the setting up of a charity. I have 3 advisors with me at the moment working on the project, who are serious contenders. They've been in this charity area for years. I'm new to charity. I just want to give back. I want to invest my time in this work because I know the importance of it. So the work that we're doing now is, like I say, education, raising awareness, speaking, putting things out, questions and products that are going to really raise awareness of the seriousness of this conversation and the importance of working with the younger people. My TED talk was recently produced as well. It's not just the strangers we should be careful of. So that really supports the work that we're doing. And the work that I'm doing is very much in this space. So I only really I come out and speak if I'm going to speak about this subject, because this is all part of the program, the work that we're doing.
It's wonderful. And your second book that you're writing, is it also in tandem with the work that you're doing now?
Yes, yeah, and it hasn't got a title yet, but it's very much focused on, so I'm speaking with survivors, sex offenders, support groups, medical, prison officers, charities, everyone, bringing the whole conversation together and, putting questions throughout. There's a lot of people, this will have affected a lot of people, and a lot of people won't talk about it ever. And that's what we've got to do, is go, look, we can talk about it. Since my TED talk was released, I've had women in their 80s. In fact, one woman, I was at the gym last week, she said, "I saw in the press that you've done this TED talk," and I had a look. And she says, "I've never told anyone this before, but I was sexually abused as a child." And she was in her 80s. And then 2 other ladies, similar ages, stepped up over the next sort of few weeks and said the same. And it was so liberating to hear for them that they can now, they said, look, we'll never tell our husbands, we'll never tell another soul, but I'm glad I've spoken to you, and the work that you're doing is incredible. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe you could think about sharing your story, not with me, not with publicly, but maybe with your family. But a lot of people don't think it's worth it. They've lived their life, and I'm like, it is worth it. We need to hear this stuff. So everything, my book, my TED Talk, the project, everything that I'm doing is a full-time job around this space. The 12 challenges I'm doing is all around child sex abuse and raising awareness now.
That's fantastic. I think the work that you're doing is absolutely fantastic. I think it's very much needed. As you said, you're the first one to speak to this, and I'm just amazed at all the work that you're doing, and really appreciate it. Now, with this 90/10, will there be, I would imagine that there's going to be resources as well for people to go to, because if you're really shy and afraid to speak, sometimes it's easy to go somewhere first.
Yes. So at the moment, like, we're in the embryonic stages of setting up. So what we're doing at the moment is fundraising to get the project up. If anyone's listening to this podcast now and thinks, do you know what, I want to go and speak to EJ, you can visit, if you go to my website, www.emmajanetaylor.com, which I'm sure you'll also share. On there is all my social media. So if you're an Instagrammer or Twitter or LinkedIner or a Facebooker, find me anywhere there on my links on my website, and just pop me a private message, and I will chat to you however which way you want to chat. Some people just, I mean, I'm surprised at some of the things I see, and it's actually I find it quite beautiful when I open a message someday and it's just like war and peace, but it's beautiful because they've got it out. And then I take my time to read it, and I'll always take my time. I might not be able to read it instantly, but I'll certainly read it, within a few days. And then I just offer my suggestions. Some people never want to speak to me again, and some people just go, yeah, okay, I'll check in with you in a few weeks, or, but it gets the ball rolling and it helps them to move forward. And so at the moment, the space that we've got is just very much through me, but as the project evolves, it will be very much through website and social media.
Beautiful. And just before we go, I just wanted to ask you if you can give us a little bit of an overview of what is the Works Company?
Okay, so the Works Company was founded by me. Well, so the Works Company is a series of lifestyle businesses, and it was founded by me probably like 25 years ago. And it's very much around, like I say, it's a series of lifestyle businesses. And it's very much working with my communities here in the UK. So it can be anything from children to adults, and it could be in the space of performing arts. It could be in the space of fitness. It could be in the space of nutrition, retreats. I have loads of activities going on under the umbrella of the Works Company. So I've got Stage Works Performing Arts School. I've got Nutritious Works. It's a fitness and nutrition company for adults. I've got She Networks, which is a networking company. And I've also got Ocean Works, which is an overseas retreat. But of course, with COVID now, forget that. And also Brexit, forget that as well. So that's on hold until we've got ourselves a bit more sorted about where we're going to sort of do activities again. But yeah, so that's really all the work that I do. And, it's a space that I love, it's a space that got me where I am today with the work that I'm doing. And it's what I've invested my world and work, my world and life in, I guess.
Beautiful. Thank you again, Emma Jane, for being here. And I hope listeners, if you're listening to this, please do reach out. And really appreciate that you're offering that for people to take that first step. And don't wait too long, because the sooner the better. And it's not to say that the healing process is going to be any easier, but at least it's going to start sooner than living with it for a long time. And a happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Lorianne. And just to go back onto that note before we finish, a lot of people sort of say, oh, I want to be fit and strong, and I want to lose weight, and I want to get a strong abs, and they think they can do that overnight. Well, that forget that. That takes weeks and weeks and weeks, as does changing your body, your diet, your lifestyle, your mental health, and your emotional health. So when you're going into any kind of recovery, don't think of it as an overnight process. Consider it work to be done to get to the best you. And that's a really important note. So sorry, I just wanted to interject. Yeah, but thank you very much for your birthday wishes as well.
And mine's a week after yours, and I'm turning 59.
Oh my goodness. Wow, you don't look it.
Well, you don't look 49 either. Again, happy birthday, and thanks again so much for sharing this message.
Thanks, Lorianne. See you again another time.
You got it. Take care.